Aloha and welcome to Ehana Kako. I'm Keli Akina, president of the Grassroots Institute. And today we're in the midst of the political season. A lot of attention has been focused on the national level, but there are exciting things taking place here in the state of Hawaii. We inaugurate a series of interviews today called Meet the Candidates. And today we are going to meet two candidates who've thrown their hats into the rink. Bravely, indeed, with great courage and great passion in order to create a better Hawaii and a better nation. My guests today are Anthony Higa, who's running for the State House of Representatives. I just want to welcome you to the program. Anthony, aloha.
Glad to be here, Keli.
Well, thanks for being here today. And in addition to that, we've got Alan Yim, who is running for the 1st Congressional District for the United States Congress. Aloha, welcome to the program, Alan.
Thanks for having me.
Well, gentlemen, first of all, I take my hat off to you because you're doing something that the vast majority of people are either too scared to do or maybe just don't care enough about. You care about our country, you care about our state, and I want to commend you for taking the time and the energy and the finances that are going to be needed to run for office. Let me just ask right out, Alan, you've got a daunting task ahead of you to run for the United States Congress, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. What has prompted you to run for office?
I was in the Marines for 5 years, and I came back to Hawaii, and I seen our foreign policy to full effect as a combat deployed Marine. And I just don't think as a nation we're doing a very good job of representing America at the federal level to the rest of the world.
What do you think you can bring to a congressional seat?
I look to bring a different voice from what we've had, a change in policy. As it goes right now, it seems that both parties seem to agree with how we should interact with the world, and I think we can do a lot better for America and for the people as a Libertarian candidate.
Now, your issues are going to be largely national issues, although you're going to also represent the state of Hawaii. Let me ask you, where did you get your background, your knowledge needed to take on such a role?
My knowledge comes from my participation in the government with the Marines, and then also growing up, both my grandparents used to work for the government. My grandfather was the head state statistician, and I've seen how much passion there is and how much dedication is needed to affect change in Hawaii and do good for the people. And I look to emulate from what my grandfather did as a public servant.
Well, very good. Anthony, you're running for a local election, State House of Representatives. Tell me first what district you hope to win in.
It's State House District 19, so that's Kahala, Diamond Head, parts of Waialae, parts of Kaimiki, and parts of Kapahulu.
What prompted you to run? And I believe this is your second run for office, isn't it?
Yes, this is my second run. I ran last election, 2014. So I'm a registered nurse at Hawaii State Hospital in Kaneohe, the state's only psychiatric forensic facility, and I want to emphasize safety. And I see things, a lot of misconception about that. So what I tell people all the time is mental illness is meant to explain behavior, not excuse it. So if someone, smokes crystal meth and they harm another person, it's not making excuses for them anymore. They need to take responsibility for what they did. There's lots of people suffering from addiction and they can get treatment, but not all of them go and hurt another person. So we're trying to change laws to make it safe while they're in the state hospital and when we release them into the community.
So you've got a lot of experience professionally with this issue that you bring to the forefront in your campaign. Are there other issues that you'll be representing the community on?
The high cost of living. That's another thing. We want to lower the cost of shipping goods to and from Hawaii, lower the cost of housing by having more land dedicated for residential development, not just expensive places to live, but real affordable housing. So
you're going to deal with some real important economic issues, things that affect everybody. Well, where did you get your background to be running? If somebody asks you, what's the base of your knowledge and your experience?
I get a lot of my information from the Grassroots.
The Grassroots Institute. Well,
yes.
Thanks for that plug.
Also, meet with people who specialize in economics. Ken Schoolin, he's at Hawaii Pacific University, and I learn stuff. Alan teaches me stuff all the time, it's not just from me. Not like I make stuff up, but I try to outsource and talk to people and listen, I should say, to the experts on this.
Well, both of you come from a certain frame of reference, and maybe I should ask you, Alan, a bit, what libertarian means. You referred to that, and you are a member of the Libertarian Party, representing the Libertarian Party. Well, what exactly is the Libertarian Party?
The Libertarian Party is we're here to represent the people as being able to choose freely for themselves what's best for them. Right now, as it is, government's sort of like a nanny almost, where it's telling us what's good for us and what choices they're making the decisions for us. And as a libertarian and the party in general, we think people are best able to choose for themselves what's good for them, and it's a lot more effective when you're able to identify your needs on your own instead of waiting for government to come and take action for you.
How would you contrast what you stand for as a libertarian to a standard position that might be held by a Democrat or might be held by a Republican?
For the Democrats or Republicans, they would, for the homeless issue, they would say, oh, we need to put more spending into action, and it comes, where does the spending come from? It comes from increased taxation. And the libertarian perspective is, let's decrease taxation so that people have more money to spend on the problems that directly affect them, and they can help them themselves out of need, or they can help others on their own through their own choices. And it's much quicker, there's less paperwork involved, and people are able to discern on their own who needs best, instead of the government approach where government has to choose people not on a case-by-case basis, but take everyone as they come, regardless of situation.
So it seems that Libertarian Party stands for allowing individuals to have control and freedom over their lives and their choices, and that the economy should be built upon free choices by people, which will ultimately create greater prosperity. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that's the goal.
Well, Anthony, let me ask you a little bit along the same lines. How does libertarian thinking factor into the kind of issue that you discussed, which is the care for the mentally ill, or the need for safety and so forth? Because typically we look to government to provide institutions, to provide funding, to provide grants even for nonprofits, to take care of those in society who can't take care of themselves. How does the Libertarian Party approach that?
Okay, I talked about the violent people who are using crystal meth, and that's actually a small fraction of people with mental illness. Most people with mental illness are not violent, so I use the analogy of obesity as another epidemic in this country, yet we don't send the feds to close down McDonald's, we don't arrest people for having high blood sugar. There are gymnasiums, there are health shops, the free market, there are people striving for your business to get you healthy. We can do that with addiction as well, and there's, like I said, there's a small fraction of people with mental illness that are violent, and yes, that's why I work. But majority of them, the free market can do that. And imagine a world where businesses, people, communities want to help them instead of stigmatizing someone with a mental illness.
Well, Alan introduced a word that many people may not be all that familiar with. They've heard it, which is libertarian, and now you've introduced a term, free market. What exactly does the free market mean? I know for some people it means Gordon Gekko on Wall Street proclaiming that greed is good. And it's about rich corporate predators upon society who need to be restrained by government regulation. But you're talking about free market as being part of the solution to dealing with those who are least advantaged. First, what is the free market, and how in the world would that help the people who are least advantaged?
Okay, you look at things like whether it's automobiles, computers, cell phones, internet, these were at one time considered luxury items. Now, most people, if they leave the house without a phone, they feel naked, they feel like, I can't function. Yet, within years, the free market, people are allowed to choose the type of cell phone, and then it gets, capitalism, free markets, competition is great for consumers. So, because they're provided with more options, and it lowers the cost of the goods or services.
So the free market has to do with allowing there to be choices in the marketplace, and that those choices are determined by the consumers as they vote with their dollars and so forth. And that, I assume, is as opposed to, say, the government controlling those decisions?
Yes.
How does that apply to the situation you brought up? Because I think sometimes people, a lot of times, think that free market might be good for the robust entrepreneur who wants to get out there into business competition, but you care deeply about the homeless, about the mentally ill, and so forth. How does free market help them?
Okay, so for the mentally ill, like I said, people have a choice of which type of healthcare services they can get, rather than just being. I know at my facility where I work, people have no choice, but that's a court order. But that's a small fraction. Other people can have a choice. They can go between different hospitals or clinics. Homelessness, instead of being stuck with just government housing. What if a bunch of businesses were competing to give you more affordable housing, and then they lower the cost to fight for the consumers?
So competition for services, even medical services and services to the poor, would actually help, rather than having just one system administered by the government. Alan, yes?
No one likes a monopoly.
Now, Alan, this is an issue that has both local cachet to it as well as national influence, because whether we're a free market or not here in Hawaii depends a lot upon what our relationship to Washington, D.C. is. So what are your thoughts about what the free market is and how that bears upon our economy?
The free market, as you mentioned earlier, it's the freedom of choice and the freedom of options within the marketplace. How best are competitors able to bring their services or products into an area and offer that as a choice for the consumer, the people in a state such as Hawaii. We have national regulations that stifle the free market options that are available to Hawaii, and by getting rid of federal legislation such as the Jones Act, we'd be able to, we'd see more goods coming into Hawaii, and it would be driving down the cost of living here in Hawaii by freeing up, putting more food on the shelves and more items to buy for a lower cost. And that could be put more towards just luxury items that you want to enjoy for your life, instead of worrying about where can I buy and what can I buy. Now you're seeing what should I buy, which one is the better option. And that's really the magic of the free market itself.
Now, many of our viewers will be familiar with the law you spoke about, the Jones Act, as being a form of protectionism that regulates shipping between American ports. Perhaps we can talk about that later on in another segment when we discuss the economy. But what I want to point out is that not all candidates running for Congress really talk about the Jones Act, other than to say it's fine, it's been in place all these years. How do you distinguish your position from those of the incumbents in Congress now from Hawaii, as well as potential candidates in the Democratic and Republican Party?
Both the Democrats and the Republican Party, they have their sort of how to hold the line with their platforms, and there's a general consensus of what they should agree upon, and it's a continued policy that we've seen for decades now in Hawaii and at the national level. And what I bring is a different voice, a voice from someone that lives here among everyone else. We've seen the high cost and increased taxation year after year, and it's time for a change in the voice in our government, that we need a different plan, and we need someone to speak up for it. And that's what I hope to do.
Well, I'm going to throw this at you quickly at the end of this segment before we go to a break. You're young and healthy and definitely youthful and energetic. Well, what if has anybody ever asked whether you were old enough to be running for the House of Representatives?
Yes, on that issue, the number one thing I got asked during the last election was, what's my age? That was the number one question.
And how did you respond to that question?
First, I was like, and I told him how old I was 30 at the time.
Well, you remember, and that's not a youngster. Reagan said in a debate once, Ronald Reagan, of his younger opponent, I will not let age become an issue in this campaign. I won't hold his youth against him. We're going to come back in a moment right after this. My guests today are Anthony Higa and Alan Yim, just wonderful people who have decided to run for office in order to serve in the public. And I think you're going to learn some fascinating things about their philosophies, their values, and again, why they're running when we come back after this short message. So don't go away.
Aloha, my name is Justine Espiritu, and I am the co-host of Hawaii Farmers Series. This is my co-host, Matthew Johnson, and we are live with you every Thursday at 4 p.m. at thinktechhawaii.com. And our show focuses on Hawaii's local food, community. We feature not only the farmers that are producing our food, but we also feature the supporters and other folks involved in the community that are trying to promote local agriculture.
Hi, I'm Chris Leatham, and I'm interested in topics related to our economy. I'm interested in technology and how we can use technology to leverage growth in our local economy. So I bring on guests who talk about a variety of issues related to all the things that I just mentioned. And so I'd like to invite you to come on to the show with me every Wednesday at 3 p.m. and we'll talk story.
Welcome back to Ehana Kako. We're here every week on the Think Tech Hawaii Broadcast Network. I want to explain a little bit about that saying. It's going around town and people are starting to use it, and I'm so delighted. Ehana Kako. Here in Hawaii, everybody knows what a pule kako means, which is let's pray together. At the Grassroots Institute, we also say Ehana kako, let's work together. Let's work together to build a better economy, government, and society. Because think of the terrible alternative if we don't work together. Nothing gets done, everything gets obstructed. And that's the value that we want to stress. But we have a vision. Let's work together to build an economy that is prosperous for all, a government that is accountable to the people, and a society that is free and that preserves the constitutional freedoms that are expressed in the rights in the Declaration of Independence. And I'm sure you share much of that vision because it's a vision we can all rally around. We're grateful to Think Tech Hawaii for being our partner, and we do tip our hat to Jay Fidel and all of the crew, the team, the producers and other hosts, and you can see about 30 to 35 hours of original content produced in this studio on thinktechhawaii.com. Now, back to my guests. We're in the midst of a political season, and a couple of early contenders to throw their hats into the ring happen to be two libertarians, Anthony Higa and Alan Yim. Alan's running for Congress, Anthony's running for State House. Well, gentlemen, you've made it clear that you're part of the Libertarian Party, and so that gives you a distinctive way of looking at issues and thinking about them. I'm wondering, what does that mean in terms of the issue of freedom in society? Sometimes people think that the major issue that libertarians deal with is the legalization of marijuana. While that may be one of the issues, there are probably many, many more that you are concerned with. Let's start with Alan over here. As a congressman, what kinds of measures would you take to help promote individual liberty?
The first measure I mentioned earlier was Jones Act reform and giving people more options in their marketplace.
Now that's an economic measure, Jones
Yes.
Act reform. That would reform the shipping laws that restrict commerce and create a kind of protectionism. But how does that actually factor into promoting the liberty of the individual freedom?
The economy is probably the most important aspect of our lives because everyone's involved in it. If you have a job or you're looking for a job, it's all based on the economy and how well we're doing as a nation. And policies that are protecting industries, that are protecting other people from getting into business, stifle our economy and actually do more harm than the good that it's trying to do.
So economic opportunity is actually a part of individual liberty, or not having the government interfere with the economy is a measure of individual liberty. Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Well, Anthony, here closer to home perhaps as well, are there some issues that you would promote and pursue in order to guarantee or in order to help to ensure individual liberty that are relevant to people of your district?
Yes, freedom of choice when it comes to education. It's not just private school or public school. It's not everyone can afford to send their kids to a private school or even homeschool them. They can't afford that. However, they should, more and more people should be allowed to send their children to the public school of their choice, not just based on where they live. Some people are, but not everyone is allowed to do that. And some schools and some teachers are better than others, and every parent wants what's best for their child. And therefore, when they hear about this other school, this other teacher is better, they want to send their kid there, but they're not always allowed to. So freedom of choice, that's a big issue when it comes to education.
Now, people who are sending their kids to private school and to public school are also paying taxes. So are you talking about them using their tax dollars the way they choose to use them?
Yes, they can use their, exactly that's what it is. And one thing I learned while campaigning, I didn't really think about it at the time, but now that you mention it, you know, school tuition should be a tax write-off. You know, high cost of living here is expensive, and you know, everyone could use as much relief as they deserve.
You mentioned that a measure of individual liberty would be the right to send your children to whatever school you chose, whichever public school even outside of your district.
Yes.
But if it's public education and the resources are constrained, isn't it necessary to have people attend the schools in their district?
Here's one thing I learned while campaigning last time.
Sure.
There are teachers, you know, who work in public schools, but they send their kids to a private school, and that's their choice. But it's like they don't believe in their system. I mean, you hear that story a lot. They don't believe in it. So why should I be restrained to my district? And you know, once the state realized, hey, you know, these guys aren't doing their job with passion and doing it right, you know, we should just allocate the resources to that better school, the better public school.
Has anyone asked you what would happen to those schools that people fled from? For example, people may live in a district where the school is not as attractive as a school across town. They send all their kids to the school across town, and so the population of the school in that district fails. The school is unable to accomplish its mission. Should we have people stay there in order to keep up the school population?
Just like a business, they have to reorg and realize that they need to improve the type of teachers they hire, the way they teach their students, and individualize teaching to a child. Not everyone is the same.
Oh, so you're saying they have to compete more?
Yes, they have to adjust and
that,
be held accountable for this. Not just, oh, I'm a teacher, I'm a state employee, and I get all these wonderful benefits just because I exist. No, that's a big problem.
And that if people, you're saying, were to be able to choose their schools, schools would have to compete in order to attract people to them.
Yes, it's not just public-private, but within the public school system, because not everyone can afford the private school tuition, but they still deserve a choice.
Okay. And similarly, Alan, when we're talking about individual liberties, the right to be able to choose, what are some other issues on a national level that you would pursue?
On the national level, one of the biggest issues that we've seen in recent years is healthcare. And one of the things standing in the way of that is health insurance that comes cross-state. And there's protectionist policies that prevent someone from getting a better health insurance option from another state that could be applied here in Hawaii. And healthcare reform is a constant issue within America. And I think being able to apply individual liberty means being able to choose the best options for you. I mean, you might not be able to buy the best healthcare service that you can get here in Hawaii through your insurance, but if there was an insurance program better, say in Texas or Colorado, it makes more sense that you should be able to choose those options and bring them here to Hawaii instead of being restricted to just the expensive cost of living here.
So you're saying that people should be able to look at the menu of all the options across the country and buy into anything, anywhere, and not be told by the government that they have to take one form or one limited set of healthcare options.
Absolutely.
Now, in addition to the area of individual liberty, libertarians believe in, as you mentioned before, the free market. And my understanding of the free market is where government intervenes as little as necessary. Maybe the government will help to ensure property rights. Maybe the government will help to ensure contract rights and that contracts are enforced. But beyond providing the basic frame of law as the condition for doing economy, the government leaves the markets alone. The government allows supply and demand to determine the price and the availability of things, and ultimately consumers choose based upon what they want and so forth. So let me ask you, Anthony, in your district or in the state of Hawaii, because as a legislator, you'll not only be representing your district, you'll also be dealing with issues that concern everyone in the state of Hawaii. What measure would you introduce or promote that would increase the level of free market operation in Hawaii for the people of Hawaii?
People should be, gosh, that's a tough question, Keli.
Oh, that's okay. I'll let Alan take a stab at it from a national level, and we'll get back to you in a moment. Alan?
being able
You
to,
mentioned the Jones Act, so you've already
Yes.
done that. We started this conversation, but is there another economic measure?
Another economic measure that I would bring in is about foreign trade. There's we have a lot of goods coming past our ports and going to other countries simply because of tariffs or taxation reasons. That's a lot of cheaper goods and options that America is missing out on simply because the federal government's pricing them out of the market. And to better be able to serve our people is to reduce taxation from the federal government on these imports from foreign goods and open up our ports so that they're busy. Not only will you get more goods in the marketplace, you're also going to get more jobs from all these ships trying to bring their goods to our
So
market.
Hawaii
shores.
would benefit from that significantly.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, the amount of ships that would come from Asia or Australia, it'd be leaps and bounds. And I definitely think there'd be more like a construction stimulus needed to
Sure.
meet the demand. So it'd bring more jobs to Hawaii, not only for decreased prices in goods, but now we'd have better paying jobs that can help people out with the cost of living
Sure.
here.
Back to the free market with Anthony over here. In your district, there are a lot of small businesses. A lot of them are, right, restaurants too. Restaurants and others that are struggling. Some of them go in and out of existence and so forth because of measures taken by the government. What kind of advocacy would you do for the small businesses so they can experience more of the free market rather than the kinds of regulations that would limit them?
Lowering taxes would help tremendously because it's not just the tax that the customer pays, but then the business has to pay it, and they can't afford to give it to their employees. And so many times, here's another thing that comes up is people have to work multiple jobs, but they can't get full-time at one place because their employer can't afford health coverage for this person. So a lot of people are working 19 hours. If you could, at least get a break for small businesses at least, so that they don't have to get this insurance. And it's not like I don't want people to get insurance. There's other ways to go about that. So that way, it's easier for consumers on their taxes, easier for the employers on their taxes. So they can hire more people. They can pay their employees more, because no one should have to work more than 40 hours a week. That's a shame, but it's the reality of it. So you lower taxes, regulations, and that way businesses can thrive. People can invest in their own health insurance, and they can fix up their own roads and whatnot, and make their community better instead of depending on the government to fix everything.
Well, that's an interesting statement, fix their own roads,
Yeah.
which kind of leads us into another area that we can at least get into before the bottom of the segment, and that is the role of government. Libertarians like to see government play as little a role as necessary as possible. Alan, on a national level, what would you like to see happen with regard to the role and the scope of government?
To be enough government that it doesn't get in our way. And by that I mean people are best able to see problems that they have and take care of it on their own. And they don't have to wait for the years of bureaucracy to get through to push something and fix it. And by the time that they get around to doing something, it's worse than when it was originally already seen as a problem.
Well, we'll come back from this short break and learn a little bit more about your views on government. This is Keli Akina with Ehana Kako. We're here every week on Mondays at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, but you can always find our program on thinktechhawaii.com or grassrootinstitute.org. We'll be right back after this short break.
Aloha, this is Maria Mera, and I'm here to invite you to my bilingual show, Viva Hawaii on Think Tech Hawaii, every other Monday at 3 p.m. We're here to inform, motivate, and entertain you. Join us. Hola, soy María Mera y estoy aquí para invitaros a mi show bilingüe Viva Hawaii en Think Tech Hawaii cada 2 lunes a las 3 de la tarde. Estamos aquí para informaros, motivaros y entreteneros. Apuntaros.
Okay, I'm Jay Fidel, that's Ray Starling. We co-host a show called Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. It's really interesting. Ray has a way of unzipping these guys. He asks them these questions and all this stuff tumbles out, and we find out stuff we would never know about without Ray's questions. Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome, Jay. I'm very pleased to be your Ed McMahon every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, here on the internet. So you can join us and see what's happening in the energy world, and there is a lot going on. So join us every Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, come around, be energized right here on Think Tech. Aloha.
Well, welcome back to our first installment of Meet the Candidates, and wonderfully we have two young candidates who are eager to really make their mark in the world, and that happens to be as members of the Libertarian Party, Anthony Higa and Alan Yim. I think you'll enjoy what they have to say about government as well as about the presidential race. We're going to talk a little bit about that. First, back to Alan. We were talking about the role of government. And I know one of the concerns that you have deeply is the size of government, the scope of government as it intrudes upon individual privacy, individual freedoms, and so forth. What are your thoughts on that?
We live in a day and age of mass media everywhere. Social media is carried with us in our pockets, and it seems to be that the government attaches itself as well in our pockets. We have, government has grown to such a size, it's able to track what we're doing. Can see where we're spending our money, and
you said track what we're doing.
Yes.
So this is an issue of privacy.
Very.
It's an issue of a basic human right in violation.
Yeah. We have a right to privacy, and who we choose to share what we're doing with should be our option. We should be able to freely choose who's watching us and who we let know our actions.
But today, we live in the computer age. We use credit cards. We have all kinds of ways in which we transmit information. We're on the internet constantly and so forth. Google is tracking us. Isn't it just to be expected that these supercomputers are going to have data about us and market things to us?
Well, the difference between these private organizations and the government is when Google watches what I'm doing, they're trying to find out what they want me to buy. When the government watches what I'm doing, they're trying to find out what they want me to do instead. And I don't like the idea of that at all. I think we should be able to freely choose what we want to do, and not be suggested by government what we have to do. And being given options by the private market is a lot more comfortable option for me.
Well, that's very intriguing. Google versus the government. You'd take Google over the government. There's some people who would take the government over Google. What do you say to them?
It's certainly an option that, if you like that, you should be able to opt into that. And I believe that's it's a good choice of being able to choose freely on your own. But as for people that like me, we like to choose our privacy, and it's very relevant that we keep our information safely. With government, you're not sure how many people are going to be exposed to the information they collected, and it's hard to keep them accountable for any information that's lost and taken by people. If a private company loses your information, say your social security number, your credit cards, and all of that, they can be held accountable and taken to court for that. Whereas the government, it's kind of saying, "Hey, big brother, what are you doing?" And they say, "Oh, my bad. We'll just we'll tax you a little bit more to cover the cost of what you lost."
Anthony, you used a reference earlier to people owning and making their own roads and so forth, which may be a strange concept to a lot of people here in Hawaii. Yeah. We don't think of roads as being, unless they're your little driveway to your house, we don't think of roads as being private. We see them as being part of the infrastructure of the whole state that is public. Are you actually suggesting that we begin to privatize more of what government does?
Yes. When it comes to roads, you can have people pay tolls for the road, because if someone lives between the windward side and town, they can help pay for the roads instead of someone who lives on the west side who has to pay not only the taxes to go for roads on their side, but they have to pay from the windward side. That way it's a little more efficient.
What are some other areas that you would look to see privatized?
When it comes to the parks or hiking trails, I'll use example Diamond Head, right? Instead of giving it ownership to a private company, that's not what I'm suggesting. You can lease it out to companies. So people will say, "Oh, we need to maintain the trails for Diamond Head, so we need to raise more taxes." No, that if you have user fees, and the private company takes care of it, therefore the people who don't use it, who are already struggling with their own jobs, with housing and food, the people who actually use it and the private company that maintains it will do it much more efficiently and maintain those kind of
Now,
parks.
why is it that private companies would do it more efficiently? Aren't there a lot of bad private companies that might do it simply to gouge the public? And don't we have experts in the government, in the civil service, and in the unions, the public sector unions, who are trained to do everything from janitorial work to rocket science?
That is true, and there are bad private companies. I'm not trying to defend every single one of them, but with the privatization system, if a private company is doing bad, you kick them out. With with government systems, a lot of times they have the monopoly, and you're stuck. Like with the public school system, I was saying, like people are just stuck with the school that's in their community, and that's not fair. People deserve choice, and if people are not doing a poor job, they need to be held accountable and kick them out, get a new one.
Let's shift a little bit to talking about national politics. We're in the midst of a presidential primary race, and it may sound far removed from what you're dealing with, but Alan, you're running on behalf of a party that is not very well represented on the national scene. We can talk about Democrats, we can talk about Republicans, and that's pretty much everybody who holds a congressional or presidential seat right now. So, well, what's the relevance of the current presidential campaign to your running, or what is the relevance of the Libertarian Party to the national scene?
We can both see the presidential circus, as I like to call it, between the Democrats and Republicans. And it's a giant sideshow that's dividing the nation between these two extremes. You have Hillary Clinton and you have Donald Trump. And both sides seem to aggravate each other to no end. And then you have the majority of the American voters. They're in the middle. They don't really have a side. They want government to do its job and to let people live their lives comfortably. And so the Libertarian Party is that option itself, is that, we're not here to play, games to win media attention. We're not trying to play favorites to just our party. We're here for the people.
Well, in a lot of ways, isn't that sentiment something expressed by the throngs of people that are showing their support for Bernie Sanders or for Donald Trump, the two less typical insider politicians, Washington insiders?
That's definitely one of their rallying cries. But if you look at it, do they hope to change like the beast from within when it comes to these massive parties that continue to do the same policies? Are they really just selling another campaign promise that's going to revert back to just business as usual after the election cycle's over? And we've seen it time and time again throughout the years. We have all these promises for change, and then immediately after an election, we continue down the same road that we've been in for the past decade at least.
Anthony, you may not be running anywhere remotely close to Washington, D.C., but a lot of local people have been engaged in the politics of the presidential race. And in fact, the recent Republican caucus had a huge surge. They had 10,000 participants 4 years ago, and now 15,000. And many of them are people who live in your district who've decided to participate in presidential politics. How does presidential politics impact what you're doing as a candidate for State House?
Well, as much as I can disagree with things that Trump brings up, at least people are getting involved. So I always look at the positive things. As far as how it affects me as a libertarian, I think people are just craving a voice that's not your traditional Democrat, that's not your traditional Republican. And I know Trump is running as a Republican, but he's not categorized in that same, he's not considered the same as the rest of them. Neither are we. That's why we're running as libertarian. Social tolerance, fiscal responsibility, kind of like the best of both. And we want to be consistent on our principles instead of just saying it once for a campaign and then changing your mind when you get into office.
Alan, you're running as an underdog. There's a seated incumbent, Mark Takai, who beat out a very experienced opponent when he went into office in the 1st Congressional District 2 years ago. There are financial resources, there is the backing of the unions and so forth that your opponents will have. So what do you say to people who may suggest that you really don't have a great chance of actually winning? How do you respond to that statement?
Well, I expect to win. This election cycle has been, more than ever, has been all about these super PACs and giant campaign donations from large organizations. And people are saying that they're dissatisfied with all this money in politics. And, I hope the turnout, and I expect the turnout to be that people vote for someone that's not about these flashy, massive spending campaigns. It's all about the people down on the personal level and the individual. And I think that's what matters most for this election cycle, is that people want to have their voices heard.
How do you expect to get the critical mass of people rallying behind Alan Yim in order to win?
Getting on the ground, talking to them one-on-one, meeting face-to-face people, just being there so that they know that I'm here to listen and I'm here to put their voice in Congress. I think it speaks volumes when a politician says, I'm actually here to listen to you, and they see that they're listening.
Well, I'm going to throw the same question to Anthony as well, because you've got the big party, Democrats, running for your seat, or the one you seek. You've got the Republican Party probably weighing in, but Libertarians, that doesn't have a lot of people registered as Libertarians. Well, what do you think your chances are of winning?
I think my chances are great because I'm willing to do the nitty-gritty work of walking house to house. I've done it again. I've done it in the past, and will do it again. I will talk to voters one at a time. I'm willing to sign wave, and anything worth doing does not come easy. People expect to win their first time. I'm like, no, that doesn't happen. I mean, and people say, why are you running? And no one erects a statue for a critic. It takes real courage to be out there in the game, to jump in the arena, to struggle, and that's what I'm willing to do. And even if since I didn't win the last time, I'm still spreading the message of liberty. You're not going to change everything overnight. People have such unrealistic expectations, and that's why I'm running, to be consistent over this. It's not a sprint, it's a marathon.
Very good. Alan, 1 minute. You're going to be in many situations in your campaign in which you have just 1 minute. Tell the public why they should vote for Alan Yim.
Well, I'm not part of the establishment. I'm here for change. People are calling for change, and the best way to do that is to vote for someone that's actually different. We've had so much of the same for so long now. It's definitely time to try an actual different course. And instead of picking these people that have been around for years, they're so far removed from what everyday people see. I think picking someone like a local boy like myself, born and raised here in Hawaii, gives you a much more better option to someone that understands your struggles in Hawaii and will provide a better showing for your opinions and what matters the most to you.
Well, thank you, Alan. Anthony, same question to you. You've got a minute. Tell people why it is they should vote for you.
Well, I'm from the community where I'm running to represent, and what makes me unique is I'm not a career politician. I'm a registered nurse, and I want to emphasize safety. This comes up, I can't talk about any particular cases because of HIPAA and patient confidentiality laws, but I really want to emphasize safety. Let's stop making excuses for these people who are high on a substance and hurting others. And there's a way to do it, to get them stable inside the state hospital and stable in the community.
Well, thank you very much, both of you. Anthony Higa, Alan Yim. We've been delighted today to be able to host 2 candidates for public office. I hope you'll look up their information on the web. This is Keli Akina with Ehana Kako on the Think Tech Hawaii Broadcast Network. Until next time, aloha.